Hi, everyone. Please take a seat. We're kicking off now. It's a session called How to Conduct an Investigation, which is obviously a very important topic. But before we begin, here's the voucher again from Dennis at Quest and Ascot Hotels. I know the text is a bit small, so I will send this around after the summit, but essentially you can go to the website, put in the code, and please, everyone in the coffee room, the chat room, please do come back. We are starting. We will stop serving you coffee if you don't come back. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we have this after party at 5 p.m., which is called the 90s Ninja Night. Bit of alliteration for you. 90s, best decade ever. Think Backstreet Boys, think Boyzone, but just remixed by two DJs. Hopefully you'll stick around and you'll have a lot of fun. We've also got a ninja activity coming up after lunch. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I'm just going to eat lunch and then leave. Well, you could do that, but then you'd miss out and you'd get FOMO massively when you see all the prizes that people are winning this afternoon. And LinkedIn is obviously a great source for you to share your stories and your posts from this summit. If you share great LinkedIn posts, you get great prizes. Lots of people won prizes yesterday, lots of hampers and chocolates yesterday because they posted on LinkedIn. So please do that. Also, there's a photo booth right there out in that right area. Please do use it. I forget to mention it at every single summit that we do. Please do use the photo booth. It is fun. And then you can post those photos on LinkedIn as well. All right, come on. Let's have a seat. All right, do we have critical mass? The folks out there near the bar, come back. How to conduct an investigation. We've got another couple of panels after that, and then we've got lunch. So I know you're hungry, but just hang in there. All right, without further ado, I think we can kick things off. So the next panel is, our moderator is Michael Corrigan, partner at Clayton Utz. Panelists are Ilona Mayer, GC and Company Secretary at Nuix, Kate Hasbani, Head of Legal Pacific at WeWork, Catherine Degotardi, Head of Legal and Compliance for Australasia at JLL, and then William Damon, Head of Legal and Compliance for ANZ at Galderma. Please, a big round of applause for our panelists. So how to conduct an investigation, pretty broad topic, but I think our panelists are going to take us through the key steps that you would use or you could use to conduct one. We've got a couple of slides that they're going to show as well, and then also a QR code at the end of their presentation where you can download an app to help you out. So please do stick around for that. It is a very useful app. I downloaded it and it's awesome. 40 minutes on the clock. At the 20-minute mark, I will pause for questions, so do save your questions until then. But until then, Michael, over to you. You just have to flip the switch up, Michael.
No.
Yeah, now it's
Better? Good, okay, excellent. All right, try again. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this session. So, investigation. So we had a bit of a chat amongst ourselves how to do this, and I think it says how to conduct an investigation, and we thought, well, we could be talking about investigating ourselves, or we could talk about being investigated. And we thought, well, maybe a fun way to do this. Investigations can come in many and varied ways. The companies do them internally for all sorts of reasons, workplace, something else. Regulators may do them as well. And as we all know, some of you may have this experience, you might suddenly find a letter arrives one day, or even a notice, or what we'll have today, even worse, a large team of burly AFP officers, accompanied by some IT professionals in your reception. And so what we thought today would be a nice bit of fun to tease out some of the issues is a simulation. So what you're going to see today is a real-life reenactment of a search warrant raid that will commence in about 2 minutes. And we have each got various roles to play today. We very much welcome and encourage audience questions, participation, comments, anything else that goes through. But what we'll try and do is just walk through some of the issues that unfold with that kind of investigation, because it raises some of the themes like privilege, dealing with internal staff issues, dealing with external stakeholders, crisis management, what do you do in the heat of the moment when these things are suddenly there in front of you and there's actually no time. With a search warrant, there's actually very little time because they're there in front of you. And what do you do about that? How do you manage that? Do you have a plan for that? So what I'll do is pass to Alona to give us a little bit of scene setting, and then we might get our search warrant up and running. Alona?
Fantastic, thank you, Michael. And I just want to say that this is a hypothetical situation, so don't anyone think it relates to any particular organisation, but I'm sure if you've been through one, you'll recognise certain parts of it. So look, I might kick off and I'll ask the panel to introduce themselves first in terms of what they do for their day job, but also then what they're going to be doing and the role they're playing today. So I might start with you, Catherine.
That was the wrong button. Hello.
Up.
That's what I had before. Second time works. My name is Catherine Degatani. I am the Head of Legal and Compliance for Australia New Zealand at JLL, or Jones Lang LaSalle. So we're a real estate services company. I'm also the ethics officer for Australia and New Zealand. And as part of that role, I do an awful lot of investigations. So you don't always want to be up on the receiving end of my conversations. As part of that qualification, I'm also I'm a certified fraud examiner with the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners.
That sounds scary, can I just say?
My name's Kate Hasbani. I'm Head of Legal for Pacific at WeWork. I've been there for 6 years, very long time. And I would say my experience with investigations, it's predominantly internal investigations. We have a lot of incidents in our buildings. We have a lot of buildings across a lot of countries. So making sure that we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's on all of those. But I have had the unfortunate experience with a few external investigations across my markets in the Pacific as well. So very much looking forward to running through this simulation today. Catherine's going to be our lovely CEO, and I'm going to be the in-house GC.
You've got the easy job.
I got the easy job.
Thank you. Will?
Hi everyone, my name is Will Damond. I'm the Head of Legal and Compliance at Galderma, a skincare company. Prior to that, I was working in food. When it comes to investigations, a lot of internal investigations relating to compliance, employment, and in my previous role also dealing with investigations from the Employment Safety Regulator and the Environmental Protection Agency. But to be honest, a lot of the stuff I do nowadays is investigating who drew on the wall, why is that plate broken, and why is your brother crying? Dealing with two small boys, it's a lot of investigations, but today my role is going to be the ACCC investigator.
I think that's a tough job too. Thanks. And everyone, my name is Ilona Meyer. I'm the General Counsel and COSEC at Nuix. So my experience, particularly in the last 18 months, has been dealing with external regulators, friends at ASIC, ATO, AFP are friends of mine too, but what great experience, right? So I look at it this way, that we can bring some good insights. And maybe just wanted to check, have we got any of our regulator friends in the audience? We do love you. We know you've got a great purpose in our community. But yeah, so and my role today is I'm going to be the commentator. So that's, thanks Michael for giving me the easiest job of all. But Michael, your role today?
Sure. So I'm partnered with Clayton Utes in the Sydney office here. Practice mainly in the area of competition law. So I've dealt with federal regulators over the years, lots of investigations, some search warrants, some other types of investigations. And so my role today will be the external lawyer who gets the phone call saying, quick, we need you down at the office. So thanks,
Okay,
Ilona.
fabulous. So I just wanted to give you this background. So according to the Australian Treasury paper in 2017, search warrants are one of the most effective investigative tools available to investigators to obtain and secure evidential material and prevent the destruction and concealment of evidence. They are widely used by a wide range of law enforcement agencies and regulatory authorities at both the Commonwealth and the state level. So they are quite regularly used, I think, is a takeaway from that. So they are executed without prior notice. So I guess when you think you're coming to work on a Friday morning thinking everything was going to be pretty casual and cool, you may get a knock at the front door. And I might just now throw to the arrival.
Okay, good morning. My name is Will and I'm an inspector from the ACCC, appointed under Part 11D of the Competition Consumer Act. I'm here to execute a warrant with my colleagues and also the AFP. Can I please speak to your General Manager?
So, Kate, assume you're the in-house legal counsel. For the purpose of this scene, you have received a call from the receptionist in a bit of a panic, may I say. What are the things that you should be thinking about?
Thank you. So I think at this stage, I'm probably sitting at my desk. I'm like, you know what, in my business, this person could be turning up for us, could be turning up for one of the customers in our building. I'm probably, you know, I'm okay at this point. Like, I'll just go down, make sure there's nothing wrong, but I will give Catherine a bit of a heads up, just, you know, FYI. There's like a team downstairs. Business as usual. Don't, you know, no need for alarm or anything, but if I give you a call in a bit.
If I have an external meeting, should I run for the door now?
Probably stay put for the time being. We just don't know what it is. I'll give you a call in about 5 minutes. So I'll patrol, jump into the lift, go downstairs to the front desk and see lovely Will there standing at the front desk. Hello, Will.
Hello.
I'm Kate Hasbani. I'm head of legal here. Can I see some identification? So, yeah, checks out. He is from the ACCC. At this point, I'm going to ask him, look, great that you've come over. Can I just quickly ask what this is in connection with?
So we have a warrant. It's all set out in the actual warrant, and what, hopefully, we have a slide. Here we are.
In case no one has seen what a warrant has looked like before, which you're incredibly fortunate, this is what it looks like. And as you start reading it, you can feel that panic kick in.
So I'm definitely panicking at this point because I can see it's addressed to me and it's not one of my customers, so I can't just punt them off down the hallway to where they need to go. Will, do you mind just sitting over here in that meeting room just whilst I go and sort some things out on my side?
To be honest, I'd prefer not to wait, but look, I can wait for a short time. How long are you expecting?
Probably just 15 minutes to go and get the troops ready. I've got to give a call to our external counsel just to get them down here because this looks pretty serious and I'm going to need some support.
Okay, if it's 15 minutes, that's fine.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Is that a long time, 15 minutes? What do you think? Can I throw to the audience? How fast can you put your sneakers on and run in 15 minutes?
How fast can you hit delete? Yeah. Don't do that. Doesn't actually do anything. So look, I've bought us a little bit of time here. Ultimately, the way that my mind is running at this point in time, and this kind of harks back to a bit of a conversation that was held yesterday about how, as lawyers, we're not supposed to really be project managers in a situation like this, but very much project manager. We're going to be taking what you hopefully have already, a dawn raid plan or an investigation plan, and you're going to be putting that into practice. So from my perspective, I'm probably going to run back upstairs and say, look, Catherine, this does actually involve us. We're going to have to execute on our plan at this point in time. Paralegal over in the back corner there, can you please give Michael a call and tell him to get down here? We have a warrant. I've asked Will to give me a copy of that, so scan that through to him so that the lawyers have that on hand. But realistically, we've got 15 minutes where we can kind of get the additional support that we need, and then also to make sure that it is still BAU, because the whole point, as you said before, is they execute on these warrants so they can turn up and they can just kind of get the evidence they need. So if you all of a sudden start telling everyone this is happening, who knows what's going to happen? You might be hitting delete, which you shouldn't. So realistically, those first sort of 5 minutes, we've got Will sitting in the room, run back upstairs, told management. The next thing I'm probably going to do is sit down and actually start to read the warrant line by line. So we can start to see in the warrant that we've got here, is it valid for execution today? Like, is it actually for today, or is it for next week? It looks like it's for today, I think, somewhere. Has it been signed off on by the right magistrate? Is it court endorsed? Does it specify specifically where it is? We can see that this one is very specifically endorsing investigations at level 2 Fishburners. So really, that's the limit of the warrant. What are the specific documents that they are allowed to be taking? When we're starting to get into the nitty-gritty of this, we would also be relying on external counsel. Are there any mistakes in the warrant that we can actually look to exclude parts of the investigation as it starts to kick off? So we're running through that. We're just kind of getting familiar with this. Michael's on his way over to the office. And then from a business side, we're probably sitting down with Catherine and just saying, look, we need to make sure that the employees know, because all of a sudden we're going to have 15 people waltz into the office and start pulling out files and probably asking for devices and everything. So, we've got a comms plan. Whether it comes from your legal team, whether it comes from a designated leader in the business, it's going to come down to you and your company. Who do people in your organisation trust? I mean, we in our company have a pretty good relationship with our business partners. They know if I'm speaking to them. It's not necessarily alarmist. That might not be the case in every organisation, so you may have to take a business decision to have someone else advise the employees, but realistically it's, just giving everyone a heads up. We're going to have some people from this particular agency, the ACCC, come through our office today. They are going to be asking for information, for copies of documents. Please make sure that I'm around, Michael's around, the paralegal's around whilst they're asking many questions. But ultimately it's business as usual, carry on your normal jobs. If you're asked to assist, please do so, don't obstruct justice. And then that next level of protection. Don't post about this on social media. Don't start speaking about this outside the office, don't send any emails. Just try and, as much as you can, do your job as you normally would. Help out the team, help out us. Don't post about it. And if you do have routine destruction or destroying of files, just stop that for the time being.
Now's not the time to do that.
Now's not the time for that. Excellent. So we've sent a copy of the warrant to Michael. He's on his way down. I guess, Michael, I'm going to throw it to you. What's your role at this? You turn up at the office. What are you going to be doing?
So at this stage, I'm reading the warrant in the taxi, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. So yeah, the job of the external lawyer is really to come and be the sort of interface between the team that's arrived and the company, and just try, observe, let the team do what they are entitled to do. If they've got a warrant, you have to let them do what they've come to do. You can't stop them. But there's a pretty important series of roles. I mean, first thing I'd be saying to Will is, if I'm in the taxi, and I might even ask, you know, if I can speak to Will on the phone, say, look, I'm on my way. You stay in the conference room till I get there, okay? Don't start. And there is a protocol the Law Council has with the federal agencies that says if a lawyer asks the team who've arrived, the search warrant team, to wait until the legal advisors have arrived, they should wait a reasonable time. So that's important, because you don't want Will's team getting all gung-ho and charging off around the place before I've got there, or, you know, Kate's, you know, being able to speak to the CEO. You've got to get some order and decorum around, and they usually will wait a short period. Next, obviously figure out what they're looking for, and these days, obviously, it's all going to be IT related. So it's all going to be about, you know, getting hold of people's devices, laptops. They'll bring with them forensic people, and that's what we're looking for. I mean, the days of hard copy files are probably fast disappearing, so there might be some paper lying around, but probably not much. It's really an IT exercise. So that's going to be a big thing. So we need the company's IT people available. And hopefully you've got someone on site. If they're off in Singapore or the other side of the world, you're going to have to ring them up and get their help, because there's going to be lots of IT questions, and that's going to be a big part of managing this whole exercise. And generally the external lawyer will just kind of follow Will around the office and his team and just stick with him like glue. Willie, where are you going next? Where are you going now? What are you going to do there? What's that? What do you do?
Even to the bathroom?
That's right. I'm going to follow you in there. Nothing personal.
It's just like those toddlers, right?
Okay, so perhaps Alona, back to you.
Sure. So you raised a really interesting question about searching electronic devices. So these days we've got our laptops, there's servers, we've got our personal phones. Quite often we've got a personal phone. So question really then is about, Catherine, do you have a personal phone? And Will, are you going to be asking for it? And Kate, what have you got to say about that?
Well, absolutely. If the warrant refers to documents of Catherine's, whether they be documents, phones, laptops, I'm going to be taking them.
But it's my personal phone. It's my personal phone, not a work-related phone. Can you still take that, Will?
Well, I suppose it's a question to the audience. Do you think in this circumstance you can take the personal phone?
Can we maybe have a show of hands? Who thinks yes? Who thinks no? Who hasn't put up their hand because they've got no idea? Michael.
So look at our little warrant behind us. The first condition column is the description of what the warrant entitles Will to grab. Things, originals, drafts or copies, documents, electronic messages, emails, including any of them stored on a computer or storage medium or other things that comprise, record any of those communications. Doesn't say who owns the phone. If the phone's sitting in the premises, well, it's in the scope of the warrant, because the warrant is an entitlement to go into some premises, and if the things that are called for in the warrant are in the premises, Will's going to grab them. So there's not much scope to have an argument. That's my phone, or that's my daughter's phone, or it's my friend's phone. Doesn't matter. It's a phone. It's on the premises. So Will's going to take it, unfortunately.
And Will, are you going to ask for passwords?
Absolutely. So if I'm getting laptops, if I'm getting phones, I presume they're going to be password protected. So Catherine, can you give me all those details, please?
Absolutely. It's 1111.
Exclamation mark.
But I suppose the next thing is that with it's going to take a while to go through these documents and your phone, so I'm going to take them off site.
That's hopefully not possible, Will, because I have to pick the kids up from school at the end of the day and they need me to have my mobile phone. How can you help?
Sorry, Catherine. You'll have to borrow a phone. Your phone's going.
Oh dear.
So I'm just wondering, are there any emails from Kate on your phone that might maybe contain legal advice?
Oh, good question. Absolutely.
All the
Kate emails me
time.
all the time.
Privileged and confidential, of course.
So what do we do with those? Do we just hand those over? I'm sure Will wants them.
Well, again, part of the warrant, I'm going to be taking them.
Michael?
So, anyone have any thoughts about that? The phone's got lots of privileged stuff on it, but Will's going to take the phone away. What do we do about that? Once he starts reading that stuff, he's read it. We don't want him to read it. So, this is the role for the lawyers, external or internal, to say, hang on, Will, that phone, that file has got privileged information on it. You can take it, but you can't open it. And you can't read the privileged material until we have made our claim for privilege and made good on that. And Will, being a very competent and well-trained federal officer, will then say, okay, I agree, because he has to. So again, there's a protocol that if the claim of privilege is made, Will has to respect it. And the federal officer, I think the state as well, all understand that. But you've got to make the claim. If you don't make the claim, Will's just going to take it. So you need to assert privilege is something you can just give away. If you just say, oh, here it is, take it, you know, and you don't make a claim of privilege, whoops, you've probably just waived it. So you have to claim privilege. So it's important to make that. And then that will trigger in Will a bit of a, oh, okay, I've got to now put it into a box and seal it up, and then we'll have to have a later discussion about it. Sure, question? Yes, they all do. The problem is, of course, most of our devices have such huge amounts of data on it that Will's sitting there and he's watching his copying team saying, this is going to take forever. And so after about 10 hours, he might say, I've had enough of waiting, I'm going to take the device. But yes, if he could just copy it across, they will just do that and hand the phone back. So that's certainly an available option. It's probably better for whoever's phone it is, you get your phone back. It comes down to a time factor, you know, because copying data can go on for hours.
It'd be a shame if I dropped the phone down the toilet at this stage.
So yeah, I'd love to take questions. Yeah, if you could introduce us. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
My name's Emma Yim from Sunrise. My question is around the personal phone.
Yeah.
Isn't it limited by in the warrant it says any communications relating to something? What if on your personal phone you don't have your work email, nothing to do with work? Do you still have to hand it over?
The difficulty is that you could claim that, but Will, being an officious and suspicious ACCC officer, will say, well, how do I know that?
Okay.
I've got to take the phone and check. And if I find there's no work emails on it, well then yes, maybe it'll be handed back to you, but I've got to check this because Will's very concerned that someone might start deleting things.
Should I let people know at this stage, Michael, that I also have a home laptop that I use, but it's not in the office at the moment?
Yes.
It's a good flag, but it's not on the premises, and the warrant only relates to items on the premises.
So I'll stay quiet on that
You
one.
can stay quiet on
Yeah, that would have been helpful before you said it in front of Will, but that's okay.
We've got another one over here.
Just a question. Rocco, I'm from Bindery Food Group. Just going back to the password question, if you're asserting that privilege claim, should you hold off on giving the passwords? Sort of say, like, this is privileged, I'm not giving you the passwords. Because I guess once that password's around, anyone can, like, does that kind of undermine?
The difficulty is legislation now, particularly the competition legislation and most others say they are entitled to require you to provide the passcodes, and it's an offence for you to obstruct it. And this is a big theme with these search warrants. Often the bigger problems come out of people not cooperating with them than actually the underlying conduct. And so you can get caught up in a sort of obstruction difficulty. They might have moved on and thought, we're not going to investigate whatever brought us here originally, but we are going to go after this person because they obstructed our warrant, and we're really upset about that. So you have to hand over the password, unfortunately. And people may not read these obscure provisions at the back of long legislation, but right at the back of the Competition and Consumer Act, there's a little provision saying they can require you to hand over your password.
We had one more question.
Hi, Karen Healy here from Cash Rewards. I've just got a question about how these sort of things are done where you have a mainly remote workforce. So your CEO might be in Melbourne, your head office is in Sydney, but people predominantly work from home. So just interested to understand how that might play out.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting and very current issue because people are working remotely or whatever. And in a sense, a search warrant is a kind of old-fashioned thing. It's linked to physical premises. And so it can be quite frustrating for Will if he turns up on a Friday and there's no one in the office. Because his warrant says, come into this office and search for these things. He comes in, hello, there's no one here, there's no phones, there's no laptops, maybe there's nothing here for me to access. And that's bad luck for Will because he's not entitled to ring you up and say, you at home, can you come in and bring your phone with you? I mean, that's not how a warrant works. A warrant is quite a rigid thing. It says, come into this premises, you can seize what's on the premises. That's pretty much it. Now, a related difficulty, of course, is you've got all your data stored in the cloud somewhere. So Will says, all right, I want to access all the emails on this topic about Catherine's been meeting with her competitors on a weekly basis for the last 5 years. And Catherine's got meeting notes of all those. And Catherine says, well, they're all stored in the cloud. They're not on the premises. And then we have a little discussion, well, are the people on the premises able to pull those down? Do they have the entitlement to say, I can just put in a request, draw that information down? Do they have control over that? We had a matter where the client didn't have that level of control. They had to get permission offshore to pull stuff off their servers. And that meant they could say to Will, we didn't have the control to do it. We would have to get permission from someone who's not here to do that. So we can't comply unless we get that permission, and your warrant doesn't force us to ask for permission. So bad luck. We don't give you the stuff on the cloud. You only get what's in the office.
I had a friend recently who was the subject of an investigation, and they syndicated 8 different premises at the one time, their HQ, and then the residential address of every single listed director.
Yeah.
So the particular agencies will, if they have been monitoring, if they suspect that there is a flexible work arrangement, if they think there is information at the relevant premises, provided the court says yes, that's what they'll do.
Just back on the privilege, because we want to get your phone back, right, Catherine, before you need to pick up the kids. So, Michael, I'd like you to be able to share how long does it take to negotiate a privilege protocol with our regulators so that they can release those devices back to you? Unfortunately, in my experience, a long time, because Catherine's phone, like many phones, has got 6,000 emails on it. And we have to go through every email. Which are the privileged ones from Kate? And were they actually privileged or not? Or did Kate just put privilege on everything as part of her email sign-off? I'm sure you wouldn't do that, Kate. So it could take a long time because you literally have to go and search through all this stuff. And so, unfortunately, the phone could be held up for quite a long time. Like months, right? Like months. Right. So Catherine might have to go out and buy a new phone.
Could they take a copy and then return that and deal with privilege later?
Or if we can get the copy done in time, that's a good option. It just depends on time to do it.
I just wanted to sort of interrupt. This, by the way, is the most interactive session I've ever had at any of the 9 summits. So thank you for all the questions. I know I've got 2 more. Is it okay if we take 2 more? Yeah.
Sure.
Hello, I'm Connor from Law Squared. I've got just a couple of questions, and they're along the route of the practical considerations when someone comes in wanting to conduct an investigation. So the first one is when you take laptops and the like, because they've got documents and communication stored on them, what happens in instances where you need your laptops to actually work and do your job, especially in industries where you need to service emergency services, or you really need to be there to provide support to critical infrastructure. So you actually need your laptops to do your job, And if they take the laptops, well, you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs. The second thing is also in relation to passwords. So after you've given your passwords Hello Kitty 89 over to the AFP, what happens if there's biometric passwords and there's also two-factor authentication? So for someone to actually access the emails, access the systems, you need your phone, your personal phone with the two-factor authentication, but that's with you at home. So I mean, it's pretty much useless to the officer. So I'm just wondering about the practical implications about communicating with the officer when they, get back to their office and they can't access stuff.
Yeah, they're quite challenging questions. On the first, you can clearly have a conversation about saying this laptop can't leave the premises. It's essential, and it's a safety issue if it's not here, because we have no backup. We have no other way to do our job, and it's required to be here. And then that's a conversation that can be had. I don't know what Will's going to say to that. I think he's going to be sceptical. I think he's going to say, well, look, a laptop's a laptop. You can get another laptop. I'm taking this one. Convince me otherwise.
And frankly, that's something you'd build into your dawn raid plan. So the first thing you'd kind of try and get an idea, how long are you going to be holding on to this equipment for? If it is going to be days, okay, well, in my dawn raid plan, I know that I have a cupboard upstairs of, new laptops ready to go, so that you can take everything that's on the premises here per the scope of your warrant, and I can go upstairs to the room that's not in your warrant.
But that should be part of your IT continuity plan.
Exactly.
If you threw that laptop down in the toilet, what would you do?
So that's probably my key takeaway from this session is you got to be prepared. Like, these sorts of things can throw up a lot of different considerations, whether they're internal or external. You're going to be thinking about things like procedural fairness, continuity, reputational risk, business risk. If you do have key client customer contracts servicing, critical infrastructure, you need to build that into your plan. And I don't know, would hazard a guess the crisis management panel, which is after us, might also have some words to say about this.
I suppose just a couple of other things to add to that is there's a general requirement for the regulator to do the copying and provide the technology, etc., back and within a reasonable time. You also look in terms of how we operate nowadays. So in terms of Galderma, but it will be a lot of other companies using Microsoft 365, SharePoint, OneDrive, etc. So even though they will have access to your physical technology, etc., you may still be able to access your emails, etc., via your personal laptop, but it still will be always an issue of not deleting things while the AFP, HCC, whoever it is, has access to it.
Yeah, my experience is that compassion is not the highlight of their manner when they're seizing these things from you. So you can try, but good luck.
Any more questions? We've just got about 7 minutes on the clock. All right.
Okay, we'll
Back to
keep
you.
going.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, this is the best part. This is where Will's going to talk to Kate.
So, Kate, I have a few questions for you.
Sure.
We've been talking about privilege, but look, I need to actually get some qualifications. So, how long have you been working here for?
I've been working here for 6 years.
And what's your title?
I am head of legal for Pacific.
So you're legally qualified.
I am a qualified legal lawyer.
Do you have a practicing certificate?
I do have a current practicing
Can I see
certificate.
it?
Sure, it's in this file.
And where do you keep all your documents?
In this filing cabinet. Some of them privileged and confidential.
Okay, so I'll throw it to the audience. What do you think about this line of questioning? Do you think this is within the warrant? Is Will able to be asking these type of questions?
Show of hands, yes. Looks like 50% of the room.
No? Still no idea? So what do you think, Michael? Do you think we should...
I would say that's fine, because Will's entitled to sort of test, really, is there going to be a proper claim of privilege here, and what is Kate's role, where does she sit in the organisation? They're just questions to identify her position, role, qualifications, and he stopped at that point. So I think pretty hard for me as external lawyer to sort of jump in and object strongly to those questions, so I think that's okay.
I think Catherine's walking past too at this point, is she not?
It's lunchtime.
I think Catherine runs into Will thinking, who is this guy? And I'm happy to help. What can I do for you?
Pleased to meet you, Will.
Hi, Catherine. Can I ask what your title is?
Oh, I'm CEO.
And how long have you been here for?
Oh, about 15 years.
So decent tenure. So do you, with that 15 years, you've come across the competitor Jones, have you?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you
Good mates.
meet with Jones regularly?
Yeah, we play golf every weekend.
Can you just stop? For those of you who know me, I'm a big purveyor of the Taylor Swift puns. Can you just not?
But I've got more questions to ask.
I've got a great story too.
I'm going to ask you to jump in here. What's the issue with this line of questioning?
Okay. What is anyone thinking here about our Will, our friend from the ACCC, who's effectively starting his investigation early? It's not part of the warrant. It's not part of the warrant. So what do we do now?
So we need to shut Will down. And so in my experience, Will and most other investigators are very good at asking questions, and they will ask questions. And they will talk to whoever they can talk in the office and ask all sorts of things, and they'll keep asking. And actually the warrant doesn't say anything about asking questions. It doesn't authorise them to do that. That doesn't stop Will, because Will's keen to get at the bottom of this investigation, so he's going to ask questions all day long. So someone needs to say to Will, stop asking the questions. We're not going to answer those questions now. Do your warrant. We're not talking to you otherwise than in relation to the warrant. So whether it's Kate or me or someone, but someone needs to tell Will politely, no more questions, okay? Just get on with the warrant. So you have to object. If you don't object, Will will keep asking questions and Catherine will keep singing away, and next know she'll be telling all about whatever she's been doing with all the competitors and how they're all great friends and, you know, life's rosy. And
I think this goes to a bit to corporate culture as well, because dawn raids are not particularly something that we might all see every day, but regulator correspondence is. And regulator correspondence often goes to the business and not to the legal team directly. And you need to make sure that your business is aware that all correspondence with regulators must be taken seriously, and they need to involve someone from the legal team or someone otherwise appropriately qualified to make sure that our correspondence with regulators is correct and clear and concise and cleared by the relevant people in the business.
100%. Look, I'm just mindful of time, but I think one of the most beneficial things we'll just do to close up is actually ask each of the panel members what's the one key takeaway that they have learnt in their experience of dealing with either internal or external regulators or investigations that we can share with you that has left an impact for us. So I might start with you, Will.
yeah, thank you. So for me, it's having the preparation. So you don't want to run around like headless chooks when the regulator comes. You want it to go as smoothly as possible. So there's a couple of things you should have in place. One is train the relevant personnel, the leadership team, the receptionist, because they're going to be the person who greets the regulators initially. Train them on the key things, so and the key regulators they may have interactions with. So tailor it within your industry. Have a step-by-step guide available, have it printed out at reception so they know what to do, have all the contact details for legal. So me being a sole legal counsel, if I'm not available, there's the details of the regional head and then the global CEO if things are needed, and also Michael's details are actually on ours. The other one is regulators are often loud and proud in terms of talking about the priorities for the year. So be aware of what they are. Train the business on what they are also, and look at how your business runs. Do you have to change how you operate? Change your marketing materials, whatever it may be, so that you are compliant and minimise the risk. And then the last thing is have the Dawn Raid app available. There's a Clayton Utes one, there's the Herbert Smith Freehills one, there's various ones. Have that available because it always helps having all of that in place to make the process run as smoothly as possible, even though it's nothing anyone wants to go through in the first place.
You know, after you've done one, you can do 2 or 3, really. If I was going to say my takeaway is sort of be present in the moment. You have pretty much handed control over to external counsel to run with that. For me, it was then focusing on all the other risks that are happening at the time Is there media at the front door while this is happening? How do we manage that? Communication to staff while this is happening. Other members of other teams off-site that might be having a simultaneous warrant in the next 5 minutes. So I think there was all these other risks as well, as you pretty much hand over the immediate need to external counsel. So I think that was a really good key learning for me. Great.
Kind of alluded to this earlier, so really it is just don't underestimate the complexity of your investigation. You don't know what you don't know, so that's why having, you know, that process in place. If you don't have the process, that's your homework. You know, the smallest of incidents can throw up all sorts of considerations, whether that's evidence, privacy, employment relations sometimes, privilege we've spoken about, reputational risk, all of those sorts of things. So really do the homework, get prepared. Preparation prevents piss poor performance, so on and so forth. So yeah, and don't also underestimate the post-mortem afterwards. You know, it's always good to take these investigations and reflect on them and see if there is anything else that you could have done better. Why did it come up in the first place? Are there procedures, policies, things that we need to be improving? Going back to the training, it's continuously a learning exercise. Catherine?
On that post-mortem point, I think, you know, a lot of these regulator investigations might cause you to do your own internal investigation, right? And we haven't talked about internal investigations today where you're actually playing the investigator role, right? You're playing the regulator role. But there's a whole lot of considerations there that you need to make sure that you're well placed to deal with future regulator correspondence going forward. You know, issues of privilege and other things, again, in terms of setting up your internal investigation of what's happened. The other point that I thought I'd just call out, because I've seen it a few times in investigations, is the impact it can have on your stakeholders, having an investigation like this, and to be really mindful of that impact in terms of not only sort of culture in the organisation, but also your staff and your employees' wellbeing. You know, offering them assistance if needed, checking in on them just to make sure that if they've been in front of a regulator and they've been asking questions, that they're also okay at the end of that.
Michael?
I suppose the final word is stay calm, and as Will helpfully said, download the free Clayton Newts app. Which I think we have a slide for, don't we, Rowan?
I like the unshameful plug, Michael.
Yeah. Look, you can take the branding off if you like. I don't mind, but there's actually...
Yeah, if you go
should be
forward a couple of slides. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that one.
So
The
you can
QR
scan
code.
it.
There's other ones out there, but it's basically an off-the-shelf little plan for what to do when these things happen. So look, it's a freebie. You can take that and say, well, at least we've got something there. If this does happen, at least we've got something to start with and not be the headless chooks, as Will said. Okay, thanks a lot.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Please give them a big round of applause. Michael, Ilona, Kate, Catherine, William. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for all the questions. That was the most interactive session we've ever had. I think all our panels should now just be case studies and simulations. That was fantastic. So we've got another panel after this called How to Handle a Crisis. Now, no matter what level you're at or what you do or what industry you're in, I think this one's going to be really, really relevant and really interesting. Also, I guess, you know, we can get some tips for our own personal family lives on how to handle crises. So without further ado, can I please introduce Joanna Capilouti, who's our moderator. She's the GC for Essilor Luxottica. Our panelists are Bianca Lau, GC for UE Insurance, Kelly Kim, Legal Counsel at Michael Castle Group, Kirk Simmons, former head of legal at Canva, and Michael Bates, VP Legal and Company Secretary for Sonda. Big round of applause, please. Excellent. All right, so before I hand over to Joanna, again, just a reminder, save your questions at the 20-minute mark. We will open up the floor. Also, lunch will be served after this session. There's a keynote, and then lunch will be served, and lunch will not be served before that, so don't even try. I know it looks great on the table in there, but please don't start eating until we've finished and we're ready for lunch. All right, over to you, Joanna.
Thank you. Okay, so, I mean, that previous session was fantastic, so well done. It was a mini simulation, which is very relevant to this session now. and the value of preparation, actually. So for me, I'm really keen to hear from the panelists about the different crises that as in-house counsel we can face, the role of the legal counsel, because I think it can vary from one organisation to the other. We can be really pivotal to that moment and to really step up in terms of demonstrating our leadership in that moment. It can also be really frightening, so we could quite easily just externally ask for support, but really we can be ready to lean in and show our value to an organisation. I think increasingly businesses will face into business crises. We're in a digital landscape where crises can come from many different directions, and the bad PR that might fall out if you haven't handled it really well can ripple very quickly and wide and far because of social media. So it's so important to damage control, limit your liability, and make sure that the matter is being handled really, really well. I mean, I think back to a personal crisis that I had in business. I remember being in a new role. I'd only been there for a few months. We were having a bit of a change in staff members, and so I was pretty much on my own. It was really late on a Friday night, and because it was a new role, I was working late and no one else was in the office. And I do recall getting a phone call, and it was from the IT team, and it was basically saying, look, we've had a data privacy breach, and here's the information, and now Joanna, it's over to you. And I had pretty much handed the baton over to me, and I remember thinking in that moment, oh shit, it's Friday night, I just want to go home. And there was a lot to do, but at the same time, I think taking experience from crises that I'd had before, having done simulations like that, really helped me feel I could do this. I knew what I needed to do. I could recognise from that point the fallout of the events. I recognised the flow of a crisis and the points in time that you're at, to be comfortable with not knowing everything up front, but you knew the journey was to find out as much as you could. And as lawyers, we're really good at that. We're really great at fact finding, knowing our business, knowing who the key stakeholders are, and where the complexities lie. So I think we're really well placed to support the business navigate a crisis. So I think I just want to kick things off by asking the panelists. You can introduce yourselves perhaps and your experience, but particularly the kind of crises that you've faced and potentially the kind of scary story about how the crisis landed on your desk and how you kind of navigated it. Bianca, maybe start with you.
Great. Wow, I'm really proud I got that. Let's go. So I'm Bianca, I'm the General Counsel at UE. I've been at UE for 5 years. I still call myself a recovering banking lawyer. I certainly had a lot of crises in banking, hypothetically, of course. Things like liquidity issues, dealing with stuff over the weekend, and all kinds of things. And I think the cool thing about being an in-house lawyer is actually, in my experience, I started getting that quite junior. And you can really learn a lot from watching what's happening, and certainly hypothetically, you've got these emergency board meetings over the weekend, you've got executives getting walked out the door hypothetically. So I think that's really helpful as a junior lawyer if you can get as much experience as possible. We're an APRA-regulated entity, and I will surely talk about this later, but as a result of that, we have fairly strong requirements from a prudential basis around crisis management, how prepared we are, what documentation we have, and I'm a big advocate for practice, practice, practice. So we just had our simulation actually a month or two ago. I'm still recovering from it. It was just a simulation, but it was traumatic. And actually when I was listening to the panel just before, I started starting to feel that heart palpitations come back, even though it's not happening in real life. Yeah, so that's my story.
Hello, my name's Kelly. I'm legal counsel at Michael Castle Group. We are a live entertainment and musical theatre production company in Australia. Probably the most significant crisis that we've had to deal with was COVID lockdowns. And this was something that not just impacted our company and our business and our people, but also the wider industry. There was a complete shutdown of any sort of live shows. Venues were closing. We weren't allowed out at all. If I can kind of rewind to 2019, we had a huge year. We had just opened Harry Potter and the Cursed Child in Melbourne, and we opened 5 international shows of The Lion King, and then we had just started casting for Hamilton. So it was at the end of 2019, our CEO Michael just landed in Sydney, and he receives an email from a colleague, an executive colleague, who says, "I think you should read this article. It's about some virus in Wuhan." Which was interesting because we were actually headed to Wuhan in February of 2020. So we had no idea what was going on. I think we were just kind of getting drips and drabs, and we had to keep an eye out on the press, keep everyone, communicate what was going on to all our cast. With The Lion King, we had a cast of around, I think it was 105. So, and a lot of Australians, so they didn't know what was going on either. And unfortunately, a few weeks later, basically it was a full-blown outbreak in Wuhan, and we had to make the decision to close that tour, Wuhan and then Beijing. So it was kind of a chaotic and traumatic experience for all of us. But I think at the end of the day, it was a story of success because we kind of came out of that, and now we're busier and bigger than ever. And I think looking back, I think that was, it was a tough time.
Hi everyone, Michael Bates, VP of Legal at Sonda. So we're a modern health tech wellbeing company that helps employers look after their team's wellbeing. Like Kelly, COVID was the biggest professional challenge that I've faced. At the time I was working at WeWork, which many of you would know, working with the wonderful Kate who just presented, and very tricky time when your whole business is based around co-working and community events and in-person collaboration, and nobody can go to the office. So raised a whole myriad of legal interesting challenges and questions. For me personally, I was more on the corporate commercial side, while Kate was more on the property side of things. And some of the contractual negotiations and the issues that raised from a contract law perspective, people, very emotional time, as you can imagine, their businesses were imploding, inability to pay their rent, and having to navigate that with them, and was very challenging time. Apart from that, there was just a number of issues around privacy, WHS, employee issues that we had to navigate. I remember vividly sort of walking around with the operations team and putting tape on the floor so we could comply with the various social distancing requirements. So a bunch of stuff you wouldn't normally do as a lawyer, but just had to be very agile and adapt to things as they unfolded, which they were on a daily basis.
Hi, my name's Kirk. Used to be head of legal at Canva. Careful what I'm going to say because there's a lot of my ex-colleagues here in the audience today. In terms of like a significant crisis that I've experienced, one of the ones that comes to mind is about 5 years ago. We're a team of 3 at the time, and on a Saturday morning, I woke up to a phone call at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And it turned out someone had posted on a website that they'd hacked the platform at the time, and that it exfiltrated nearly 140 million user records. And so that started a data incident for us. And we had playbooks. I think someone mentioned yesterday, Alfredo, one of the sessions, that everyone's got a playbook, but everyone hadn't gone through it. It wasn't tailored to communicating on Slack and everything. But having to work through that and having to deal with the fact we had a fundraising ongoing. We had just the very fact that someone had publicly announced this, the clock started running in terms of some of our notification obligations, all of that stuff basically led to what I would call a crisis, but your crisis is always contextual. You might be a big company, small company, You might play in a space that's heavily regulated, you might not. So yeah, it's interesting, just the parallels between this session and the one before. Like investigations are crises and crises can be investigations, but yeah.
So I think just to add to those different types of crises, I've had experience with product recalls, dealing with food and consumer healthcare manufacturing companies. That can happen quite regularly, where safety may or may not be an issue. And typically where it is an issue, then you've got to deal with recalling product potentially from consumers or from retail, and that's a big decision that you need to make. And it's a difficult decision to make because you know it's going to affect you from a reputational perspective. But if safety is your primary concern for patients or for consumers, then absolutely you're driven by your values at that point in time. And also working for organisations that have a bricks and mortar presence, safety incidents can regularly come up, and they're unfortunate, but they have to be dealt with, again, with a regulator's scrutiny. So there's a lot of fact-finding and stakeholder engagement there as well, which can be quite complex. I just want to dip into, into the way an organisation might respond to a crisis. So having worked for a number of organisations, on the one hand, very, very large, working in the head office overseas in the UK, massive organisation, well-resourced, has a crisis management team, amazing, versus working for an affiliate in the local market, ANZ. They don't even have a crisis management plan. So there's no pre-plan, there's no idea about what to do in the event of a crisis. They just turn to the lawyer and then you're held holding the baby. Just from your experience, I'm keen to hear of how your organisations managed the crisis. Were they well organised? Did they manage it well? Bianca?
Yeah, I think certainly now, all the entities I've worked for the last 15 years have been APRA regulated, but I would say 15 years ago, maybe it looked a little bit different and a little bit more chaotic. I do think, there's no wood to touch either. I think our organisation's fairly sophisticated now in terms of we have really robust crisis management plans. We test them at least annually, but we also test departments specifically as well for their own mini crises. And so I think we're quite well versed, but having just done our annual simulation, we're still finding little gaps and little things that we're like, oh wow, actually we didn't think about that. Let's fix that for the next, hopefully pretend crisis, not real crisis. So I think it's one thing to have the plans in place, but if you're not practicing what they could look like in a real situation, you'll probably find there's a heap of gaps there.
Your mic was on.
Has anyone got experience perhaps working for, less organised company that doesn't have all the simulation and investment into pre-planning and how that might have fallen out?
I don't know if you're looking at me, but we certainly, when we had our incident, we had a plan, but we hadn't simulated it. Now we have since done it. But I would be surprised, like everyone who has a crisis, I suspect if you do a simulation, you're always going to, as Bianca mentioned, you're always going to identify things you can fix, right? So I think in terms of how our organisation managed it at the time, I think they did well. A lot of people didn't know that we had it. I think the company's gone from strength to strength. But I think what's good is in a smaller company, it might have been the same with where you guys are, Kelly and Mike, but you kind of are probably a bit more nimble, and if you do things wrongly, you can iterate. Like I think one thing that comes to mind is when we had that incident, everyone wanted to help. So there would be Slack channels spun up on every single topic, and as a lawyer, you're thinking, okay, that's not great. I'm not in that channel and that's a problem for privilege, but also why are all these different communication chains getting spun up? And Are people running around like headless chooks doing things they need to do? Are people addressing the right things? And so I think like very quickly all the channels got locked down. No one was creating new channels and things like that. You can iterate on as you're going through a crisis, hopefully, if you've got the bandwidth to do that.
What would be words of advice for anyone in the room who doesn't even have a crisis management plan? We talked earlier about perhaps downloading an app for, when a regulator turns up to your site, and that's great that sort of thing is readily available. So we can take advantage of that if you don't have one already. But what about a crisis management plan? Where do you go if you're starting from scratch? Anybody got a tip?
Well, after that AI session, maybe you should ask ChatGPT what a good one would look like. There's probably, I think a lot of the law firms probably have some good templates that you can start off with. I'm sure there's a lot of publicly available documents. I think probably just think about if you're at a company that doesn't have one. If you're struggling with the buy-in, there are so many public crisis situations happening that are like a nightmare, and they range from your big, your Medibanks, your Optus, but there's also plenty of smaller companies that we've all heard about now, and the only reason we know who they are is because actually they held a lot of data and it got leaked. So I would recommend doing that whole education piece of your executive team if you're struggling to get buy-in about those sorts of situations and learnings, and then maybe get the momentum and support there as well.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I think personally, if you can't get that buy-in for whatever reason, culturally your organisation is just a bit more relaxed about that sort of thing and wants to spend time on other stuff and not on managing a crisis, I would highly recommend that at least as the in-house lawyer, GC, at least you have one. You've thought through the issues in advance. You know precisely what you would do for different situations that might arise, because you kind of can guess the kind of situations that would affect your organisation, your business. So you can kind of predict for each different type of scenario, how would you approach that scenario, perhaps even if you pair up with the next most important team, which is the communications team, and just be ready with what your holding statement might look like, or what your reactive, proactive, your FAQs page might look like. So even if you have a template that you've got a starting point, it's really going to help in that scenario when the crisis hits, because when it happens, it's happening fast, and like the previous session, there is no time to think, and you have to be able to react very, very quickly. Okay, so perhaps if we can move on then to the role of the legal counsel in a crisis, and I think we're all in-house lawyers in this room, and curious as to what role we may play if a crisis hasn't already hit your desk. It's only a matter of time, so it's worth thinking about what role you would play. I'd be interested to hear from panellists about what role you played, whether that was quite similar, whether that can be different from one organisation to the other. So perhaps, Michael, if we start with your experience.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the biggest and most important roles that we can play is sort of acting as a thermostat and setting the tone of the reaction to the crisis. I've always enjoyed the quote that calm is contagious, and I think it's really important as lawyers that we are calm and measured in the way we're sort of responding, and because the business feeds off that. So if we're panicking, then everyone's going to start to panic. So yeah, I think that's a critical role we play, is just acting calm and dealing with the response in a very sort of measured and calm way. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Hello. I absolutely agree, and I think specifically when we had our COVID crisis a few years ago, our team was really able to, I was at a conference somewhere and someone said that lawyers are the handbrakes to happiness, especially in an in-house situation, which I guess in some situations I agree, but I think when you're in the middle of a crisis, I think your colleagues who are not lawyers come to you for advice and for some comfort and for some guidance. And I think really channeling that calmness as well when you're giving that advice is critical, because a crisis is a crisis because it affects the organisation, but it absolutely affects the employees, and it can be a very stressful time. So just making sure that you're someone that they can talk to and really you can listen out for them.
The other thing I'd add to what you both said is I think the business needs to keep going, right? So you've got your response team for whatever the crisis is, but you need to keep the business doing what it's doing. So I think I like that calm is contagious thing because it means the business can focus on that.
I think during COVID, actually, I was head of legal, but I got renamed the head of reason, which I'm pretty chuffed at. I might put that on my LinkedIn profile. And it's all the other skills beyond being a lawyer that you can really, particularly during a crisis, leverage. And it's that thermostat piece and the, let cool heads prevail and, actually let's stop and think about in 12 months' time, would we look back at that decision and be proud and happy with how we handled it? So that future-gazing piece as well, I think lawyers do really well.
I think, Kirk, you touched on a good point, which is you can have a massive crisis going on and you could have as many hands as you've got, all hands on deck. But let's say you are very lightly resourced as a legal team. And you've really got to commit and prioritise because the time's ticking, right? The clock's ticking. So how do you manage looking after a crisis and looking after the BAU, which still needs to tick over? The business still has got its demand on your time. So I'm curious as to I'm not sure if any of our panellists have been lightly resourced at the time, the sole legal counsel perhaps for an organisation where a crisis is hit at the same time as having a busy working agenda.
Just one thing that comes to mind, because I'm facing this way and I can see someone in the audience that I remember interviewing at the time of this crisis, but I think you got to work out what matters and you probably discard some tasks and you keep some on the list. But interviewing at that time, we had a small team. We needed to hire someone for a particular area. And I remember turning up to an interview very flat, like a shell of a human being. And it was probably a bad experience for that person. They joined, but at least the interview happened, and I think prioritising that I think was important because we were already drowning, and if we didn't get that person, we would have been further underwater.
Yeah, I think from my own experience, I think number one, you've always got good contacts with your external lawyers, right? So you can always call in extra hands if you need, and if you've got a great relationship. So I think the first session that was run today, those partners, those contacts will jump in gladly to help you out in that situation. And so I really do rely on my external lawyers for sometimes even just an advice as to how do I even navigate this? Who has the skill set to be able to deal with this particular scenario? And then that gets me going. So if I'm in that situation, low resource, that's my first starting point. I get on the phone to one of my external lawyers who I trust to give me the right guidance. And secondly, I guess there are evolving legal services out there who have teams who can just jump in and take that responsibility away from you. And as GC or lead legal counsel internally, you can direct them strategically and help them with the information that they need to be able to do one part of the job for you, whether it's dealing with the crisis or dealing with the in-house work. There's additional support now that never existed 10 years ago when I was going through these sorts of crises. So, yeah.
Joanna, actually on that, has flagged something with me. I'm an insurance lawyer, so this is the first thing I think of. The external lawyer piece is really important, particularly for cyber incidents. It might be controversial, but do not use the lawyers for your cyber insurer because they are not acting in your best interest. They care about minimising cost. Your company probably cares a bit more about its reputation, so apologies to anyone if they're a cyber insurance lawyer, but make sure you have your own representation.
Thank you. Joanna, sorry, I was just going to press pause. But the 15 minutes left in the session. Any questions? Crisis management? No, nobody's faced a crisis before? All right, okay, back to you, Joanna.
Okay, so I want to shift now into your key priorities when there's an unfolding crisis. So you're in the thick of it, it's all really happening. What are the key priorities that your business should be thinking about when it's looking into the start of the journey of an unfolding crisis? Anyone want to take that one?
I think for us, or any organisation, probably one of the most important things is protecting your company's reputation, and obviously trying to mitigate any financial loss. When we had our COVID crisis, the financial side was inevitable. We were losing money, and there was absolutely no revenue coming in. So for us, it was all about trying to keep relationships going. And I mean, all our production partners, our venues, our suppliers, our licensors who are mostly based in the US or the UK. So preserving those relationships, and having a plan with a clear communication plan. We were working really closely with our PR team, our PR director, to try get messages out that were legally cleared, but also showing compassion. I think, especially in my industry, that is really essential.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with that. The communication channel piece is massive, and that's how we're going to communicate in person, how often we're going to meet. Are we going to meet every hour, every few hours? Are we going to use the company internal chat messaging? Are we going to do this by email? Just setting up those protocols are so important in a crisis situation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just book time. If it's important to the company, if it's a crisis, then every other meeting can fall away from people's diaries, but figure out that cadence and communicate. But also, I think having a single source of truth is really helpful, because if people are all spinning up documents in different pieces of software and different channels, that's not helpful, especially if you have a regulator or someone else, like it might be litigious, later down the track. Trying to piece together all those threads is very difficult.
Yeah, I'd have to say that controlling the flow and accuracy of information is absolutely critical. You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. So I think that would be one of the biggest priorities, is making sure that nothing goes out unless legal team has been across it. I do think that there is this age-old tension, though, between transparency and leaning in and being compassionate to affected stakeholders, even if members of the public or your customers whose information has been accessed. There's this fine line between transparency and the need to communicate, and then also the need for confidentiality and keeping the integrity of your investigation or your fact-finding process in place, and protecting your liability as well. And it's this juggling act that you have to think about all the way through the process. From my experience, communicating right from the beginning, as soon as that you've heard about the crisis, you just got to be ready to communicate at that point, and preferably doing it on a single source of truth, a bit like having a website rather than multiple different channels, is critical. So that's the place that you're seen to be on top of things, you're in control, and that information's accurate, and that's what the external world sees, and then updating that over the course of time. So I think that's a really great way to manage it. But I'm curious to hear about how you might manage that tension, especially when you haven't got all the facts, and actually you don't know yet who's to blame, and you can't be pointing fingers out there publicly. You've got to take ownership for any issues or mistakes that you might have made as an organisation. But this is, such a tension that you have to navigate. Do you have a view on that, Bianca?
Yeah, and actually one of the things with our simulation that came up, we walked right into the trap. We got some externals in to do it. I say we, it wasn't me that made this call. The decision on when you call the regulator, yes, and I think we asked before, there's no regulators in the room. Obviously you need to notify them promptly, but just be really mindful of when you do it, and that you're ready to have that conversation, and be ready for them to be all over your back when that happens. And I think there can be this whole, we need to let them know right now, and actually right now is maybe not the best time. Gather some more information, just get a little bit of a handle on it, take a breath, get a plan in place. I think the one thing to do really early when you're in that first crisis management meeting that's being called is actually also have the conversation, what sort of things do we want to cover by privilege? And I think we've seen quite publicly, you can't claw it back later and it just blows up in your face. So be very measured and considered about what are the things we're going to do when responding to this crisis that we want to maintain privilege over, and what are the protocols that come with that, and what's the expectation. I think it's a balancing act. Don't try and make it all privilege. You're actually going to tie the business up in knots, and it's going to probably all get waved and messy anyway.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I think probably just from my perspective as well, just another key thing to think about if you're in the middle of a crisis is just contain the situation, contain the damage. So, I mean, from an IT security perspective, your IT team will be all over it. But if you're in another situation, whether it's in relation to something that's live, unfolding in relation to a safety incident on site, just making sure that everyone is just shutting down that site, making sure that members of the public are protected, employees' safety is being considered as well. So I think it's probably really obvious is damage control and putting a stop to it, but handling the situation is just trying to put a stop to it as much as you can.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as a lawyer, you kind of want to jump in and do your bit, but I feel like that containment exercise is so important, and I think in a data incident context, you might want to know like the cut of users by country or things like that. But if the engineers are focused on like solving the incident, that is key, because the incident will get worse if they don't focus on that. But it comes back to calm is contagious.
Okay, so if I just take you to the preparation piece, we've talked about having a plan and making sure that you're ready for that big moment. Perhaps if we could just talk about some of the things that you might have in your plan. So for those people in the room who perhaps don't have one and they want to give some thought to some of the key criteria for having a good crisis management plan, what would you say should be captured? Anybody?
I can say what we had before, which was like a very long data breach response plan prepared by a law firm, which no one had read. And then someone after, as like a response action, was like they've tidied it up and put it into Canva. It's like one page. And I think having that on one page is way more effective for a business to digest in the heat of the moment. So yeah, I think like testing things out, I hadn't really considered like how difficult it would be to get a lawyer to engage a forensic expert on a Saturday in our incident. And the answer is it's very difficult, and the team wants to get that forensic expert on deck immediately. And so you kind of end up going, okay, we won't try and claim privilege, and we'll just get the person doing what they need to do ASAP.
Any other ideas of what else might be in the crisis, what might be inside the crisis management plan?
Yeah, I think the who in the organisation, but also who the delegates are, in terms of you're not always like, you might be sitting on a beach in Bali and don't have your phone turned on. So who are the people, like who are the contacts both internally and externally that are going to respond is really valuable, and making sure the crisis plan actually is also accessible to everybody, not just, you know where it is and you're in Bali. So I think that's really important. This one's probably a bit more, probably just something to think about, and I wouldn't put it in the plan itself, but I think it is helpful to have, is have a think about whether or not you should have a documented position on ransoms, for example. A lot of companies sort of have very secret documents around when you will and won't pay a ransom, or at least some principles around that. In terms of that document, I highly recommend it's privileged. I highly recommend you have it on your systems, because the hackers might have a look at it themselves and figure out when you're going to need them. It probably should be a document that's stored somewhere secure and only a very limited number of people know about it. But you don't have the benefit always of having a lot of time to work through that. So those types of sort of having that consideration ahead of a crisis is really useful as well.
And what about the role of the legal counsel in the crisis management plan? I'm curious as to what role the legal counsel has in your organisations, because I think it can vary from one to the other depending on how sophisticated your organisation is, or how ready they are even for a crisis. Like I mentioned before, if they're not ready, then the in-house lawyer can actually play the project management role, and then you find yourself exercising skills that you might not normally exercise, because all of a sudden you're calling the meetings, you're inviting everybody along, you're taking notes, you've got an action plan ready, you're following people up. and then you're taking a very different approach to what you normally do as the in-house lawyer. Has anyone got experience of taking a non-legal role in a crisis?
Not personally, but we actually have an industrial relations lawyer at our company at MCG who does do all the policy drafting, and she revisits this, I think, every year, and she works really closely with the communications team, our comms PR team, to include things that are relevant to us. So things like media statement templates, I think, is really important as well to have in, and how to set these statements out. So what facts are we giving them? What information we're giving them? I think these are really important.
I was just going to add, like you said, you're kind of the thermostat before, but I also think you're also like a moral compass. And your organisation might not have an ethics team or whatever it might be, trust and safety, but you end up being able to, because you know what the laws are, and you might have a background, maybe you're a litigator or something, or in regulatory role, you might be able to basically do the 60 minutes test or whatever it is in your country to figure out how things might go and how it should go.
Okay, so just in the remaining time we've got available, how about we think about the after action review? The last session did talk about the importance of reflecting on what's happened and learning from the exercise. Is this something that's part of your crisis management plan, or is it something that your organisations are culturally something they're willing to do anyway? How do you approach this? Perhaps Bianca, if you could, you're quite organised. Your organisation probably makes it something they do as a matter of course.
It is part of our program, actually, and the external consultants basically come back with a report and tell us how well we did, so no pressure. Yeah, so it's very, very important. As I said, it doesn't matter how many times we practice this, we will always find things that we should have thought about a bit more, and even off the back of the most recent one, we thought we had really robust comms plans in place, for example, but actually they're going to need updating as well. It's funny, the crises, particularly for your comms team, can be quite intense, and the amount of work that comes out of it, but the need to respond instantly. So the more and more you can enhance those kinds of materials and have those ready to go, and so they can be tweaked fairly easily for media statements or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think it's really, really important. So it's, you know, I think everyone should have a plan. It doesn't have to be this immaculate, amazing document. Actually, I liked the idea of the shorter the better, right? And then the next step is getting it practiced. But even if you're practicing it, if you're not having that reflection session afterwards about, okay, well, what didn't go quite as well as we'd like, let's fix that up for next year so we can get an A++. Yeah.
I love that you've got consultants that come in and do this for you. That's just amazing. That would be a dream.
I want to do that as a job because it's actually like you get to torment the people in the organisation, including the CEO. It's yeah, it looks fun.
Your career path ahead.
What's the old saying? Never let a crisis go to waste. I think it's such a critical part of dealing with a crisis is learning from it. So at the moment, in my current role at Sonder, we handle a huge amount of personal and really sensitive health clinical information. So fortunately, it had no data breaches, but there have been certain flare-ups. And as minor as they are, we'll sit down as a group, do a retrospective. Everyone will comment as to what they observed during the incident. What was our reactions, what were the actions that we took, and then what are the learnings that we can implement for the next time. So yeah, that continuous improvement and learning is really critical.
And I don't want to disparage our panel, but you could see how interesting it was in the previous panel when it's like an engaging simulation. And I think if you can make it fun and creative, certainly with like incident response, if you work with a security person, we used to get an engineer from our team to do it, and you can create a really interesting like hacking situation. And it just makes it more memorable. You can use the errors you've made in the past as like some of the pitfalls in the scenario, and it's just far better to get takeaways from the panel.
And there's nothing like doing something to actually let it sit in your head what you need to do for next time. Actually, the engagement, the doing, the thinking for yourself, and then realising actually you missed a few things. You learn so much that way, as opposed to just reading a few articles and pulling together a crisis management plan and then filing it away. I think doing some kind of simulation for me is just the best thing to do. And don't wait for a crisis to give it a good practice. Do it in advance. So I think we're out of time, Rohan.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I know we've got a few questions. I do want to go into the next session and then take you to lunch because I could see some hungry faces. So if you have questions, please do ask our panelists during the lunch break. But big round of applause for our panel. Joanna, Bianca, Kelly, Kirk, Michael, thank you so much. That was fantastic. Awesome. So the next session, just before lunch, is on augmented reality. It's kind of cool. So Thomson Reuters is presenting that one. But even before I get our speaker on stage, we've got a video to play, I believe. So Man, you can take it away, please.
For a general counsel, no 2 days are ever the same. Advising a business means handling multiple matters all the time, and technology can help you stay on top of it. Before, you'd send large volumes of documents to external counsel for review. Now with CoCounsel Core, you can do this work in seconds. Just upload a third-party contract, then ask CoCounsel Core to redline it against your internal position or an up-to-date standard policy from Practical Law. At the same time, ask CoCounsel Core to analyse a database of emails and files to create a chronology of events. Spend less time on mundane tasks with CoCounsel Core's AI skill set. That means more time giving strategic advice and helping your business grow. What's next? Meetings, of course. In-house lawyers often rely on outside counsel, but with a full calendar and your own work to do, why waste time manually checking your law firm's invoices? With Legal Tracker, you can completely automate that process and control your legal spend. You can even outsource matters to different law firms and make informed, data-driven decisions, including insights on the market value of your law firm's rates. And don't spend the rest of your afternoon searching through old documents to build that new contract. Instead, open HiQ, answer a few questions, and it will generate the contract for you. In fact, HiQ can help manage all your legal department operations, oversee matter workflows and contract metrics, create a legal front door with self-service tools, and so much more. Even when you clock off, the work is still being done. That's how Thomson Reuters helps general counsel and their legal teams work smarter all day, every day. And it's just the start.
So straight from the screen into real life, we've got Tirli Salok. Please welcome Tirli to the stage. She's the Director of Legal Transformation at Thomson Reuters, and she'll be talking to us about in-house augmented. Thank you so much, Tirli. And again, if you have any questions, please do ask them. We'll, I think, save some time for one question, maybe at the end, if that's okay. Tirli, over to you.
Straight from the screen. Yeah, someone asked me if I was real or if I was an actress, and I'm like, no, I am real, I promise you. So hi everybody, hi ninjas, and welcome to today's keynote, In-House Augmented. My name is Tirli Salok. I'm a former in-house lawyer myself, having practiced for over 10 years in-house, and I'm standing before you today as the Director of Legal Transformation for Thomson Reuters. We have a very special experience planned for our next 15 minutes, and I promise to then have you out the door for lunch. But first, let me set the scene. I've had the benefit of reviewing some of the latest research from Thomson Reuters, and that is what informs the way forward in our customer conversations. So there are two reports that I want to talk to you about just super briefly. The first is called the Future of Professionals report, and the report really unpacks AI perceptions amongst a variety of professionals, so tax, legal, accounting, in the APAC region. The second is a report called the State of the Corporate Law Department report. If you haven't seen this, this one is for you. This report is based on responses from our in-house council friends in the Northern Hemisphere, but I would say it's equally applicable here in terms of the sorts of themes, work and concepts that are coming through. So based on those reports, long story short is this: AI is here to stay. It is going to transform the way that we work as lawyers. If you aren't already having a go and using AI to transform and augment the capacity of your in-house legal team, I'm sorry to say, you're already behind. Now, what the research tells us is that most C-suite executives say that if they're not already using AI for a wide variety of functions, they will be within the next 18 months. And this is interesting because what it means is that even those GCs who do not feel that AI has reached a level at which it's ready to be used by their department, and I talk to those on a weekly basis, or perhaps that their department isn't yet ready for AI, and we talk to them too, the broader enterprise is probably already moving towards AI rapidly. So you need to get as comfortable as on advising on AI as you are on things like contracts and litigations. This is going to become part of your toolbox. All right, second thing, professionals pin their hopes for Gen AI on liberating time for higher level work. This was followed by increased productivity, evolution of new business models and service offerings, and transforming client service. We want AI to do the admin work where we don't add legal skill and value. And we know that in-house is full of plenty of admin work that the legal team is left to push around. And all of this matters. All of this matters because the reports reveal that in 2024, GCs want to pivot from protecting the business, and that's a theme that we've seen in the reports of the last couple of years, to becoming strategic advisors. Now, you may say, well, I am already providing strategic advice to enable growth in my business. That's great. But the research also tells us that when asked, the C-suite does not share the perception that the law department can enable business growth. That's a massive problem. So how do we get that message through? The answer is found in exploring how to leverage Gen AI and other new technologies, as well as ways of working, to improve efficiency and create capacity for growth-enabling work, but also, critically, to fuel innovation and generate greater strategic value to the business. Now, yes, phones. Oh, did you hear it going off in your pocket? You're just trying to come to a conference for a day you can't escape. The work never stops. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just escape the inbox for the day? But I'm going to ask you now to lend me your imaginations and get your phones out. No one says that at a conference. Get your phones out. Lend me your imaginations and let's conceptualize dealing with that incoming work request as if you were a GC empowered with visionary AI-enabled legal tech from Thomson Reuters, and all in time for lunch. All right, no tall ask. Here we go. I'm going to put a QR code on the screen. I'm going to ask you to scan that QR code. Some of you, I'm sorry to say, if you're on Android, might have problems, but we're going to click along on the screen. Hold on. I've got the clicker. Oh no, someone's clicking it for me. Thank you. All right, so you're going to hold that up. It's going to look like this. Next slide, please. Okie doke, so you're going to see something that says Adobe Aero. You're going to click open, continue, and then you're going to get this augmented reality little screen. What I want you to do is point it at the floor. You need to anchor it on the floor somewhere in front of you. To the side is fine, wherever you like. If your phone's not working, you can watch along on the screen with me. I'm also going to encourage you not to jump ahead in the process. I know if it was me sitting there, I'd be madly clicking on it right now. Please don't. You can join in the group experience. But if you do feel the need and you do want to jump ahead and get stuck, just hit the 3 dots in the top right of the screen to bring up the menu and then click restart and you can go through the process again. All right, I'm just going to ask for a rough show of hands when you're on the green Get Started page. If you've clicked the green Get Started page, you should be seeing this message. Is anyone seeing this? Yep, okay, we've got a few thumbs up. Yes, yes, a couple. Fantastic. All right, here we go. As I say, you can follow along on the screen if you like. All right, here we go. You're sitting at a conference, as you are, and on your screen you can see, as you are, we've got an email from Senior Executive Carol Smith. Now, you've been building a very strong relationship with Carol, and she's a key stakeholder, and you want to impress her. Her email has come in via Outlook, and of course, it's marked urgent. Does anyone not send emails marked urgent? Okay, it's the Samstone Industries Service Supply Agreement. We've been waiting on that one. Samstone are providing your company with the widgets for a new product. We're going to need to review that agreement. It looks like they'll also want to share some confidential info, so Carol's also asking for an NDA. Tick, well trained. Good news, you can do this work right here, right now. Let's tap on the screen to get started. Next slide. Okie doke. Now, Thomson Reuters AI-enabled matter management software is right onto the job. It's offering to create a new matter using HiQ. Creating the matter is important. It's how you're going to track the work that you're doing. It's how you're going to report to the CEO on that important efficiency and business enablement that we heard about in the reports. And it's how you're going to track your team's workload and capacity. Click on Create Matter. All right, Outlook is mobilized to share the email and the attachments directly into HiQ. No forwarding, no clicking, no dragging across, no trying to send attachments separately. So far, so good. It looks like you've already selected auto upload replies in that little swipe box. That's great, good thinking. That means that every email that comes in related to this one is now just going to file automatically onto the matter with the matter number. Done. Now, it's handy to have all the correspondence and documentation in one place for when you're on leave in a few weeks, right? Over the school holidays, and you've got a colleague who can just keep this one moving. They're going to have access to everything without you having to forward key documentation manually. Tick. All right, let's click continue. Are you all still with me? Okay, good. It's the first of a kind, you never know. Okay, here we go. All right, so HiQ is creating the matter. It has pre-populated some key information, and based on your existing corporate delegations and risk profiles, has already allocated a risk rating to the incoming work. Now, I want you to tick the box to keep the requester updated. That saves us emailing Carol back to let her know that you're onto it. The tech will do that for you. You've already agreed what that email to her looks like, so don't worry, it's all fluffy and lovely. Carol will also be able to see how work is progressing on the matter as it goes on at any time she wants with her own dashboard as a business user. So no more chaser emails. How are you going with that? Is that signed? Where are you up to? She can check on all that herself. Amazing. All right, you've ticked the box. And so now we're going to create the matter. Let's go ahead and click the Create Matter button. Fantastic. Next up, co-counsel knows you need to generate the NDA as requested in Carol's note. Let's click on that. Using your pre-automated standard NDA, you quickly answer some questions to generate a fresh NDA based on your corporate letterhead. Let's go ahead to click and save that to the matter. Fantastic, NDA has been generated. Right, next up, we're going to ask co-counsel to summarise the key terms of the contract to bring them to Carol's attention. And we're also going to get co-counsel to redline Samstone's supply agreement back to your standard terms. Let's press the orange button. All right. So here we've asked co-counsel to go ahead and summarise the key terms and then redline the document, and co-counsel will get to work. I think we're up to this slide. There we go. All right, so here we can see the red line of key clauses back to your company's standard positions. I appreciate the human has to be in the loop. This is an imaginary scenario, so you do need to check this work yourself, but for the purpose of the exercise, you've had a quick look. This all looks reasonable for a first draft, and in a minute you're going to check those red lines in situ in a Word document before you send them back to Carol. But before you do that, you're going to take a look at co-counsel's summary of the key terms so that you don't miss any big red flags. Let's click on the orange button to keep going. Here, co-counsel has generated the summary of the document. You've opted for a brief summary. It can do long ones. You've opted for a brief one with key points shown page by page so you don't miss anything. This is where you're going to see your indemnity clauses and your liability caps and stuff come out. You can review this a bit more later, but right now it looks like there are no showstoppers, and we need to get this back to Carol to share with Samstone. Click the orange button to continue. Really indulge me imaginations here. Okay, so next up you're checking out the red line of the contract in Word, and Co-Counsel has added annotations explaining the markup and your company's standard positions. You can see the annotations on the side. You could also have those in your own name if you wanted. So fast, so easy, it's all in situ, ready to go. All that's left is to get this back to Carol. Click anywhere to continue. Okay, great. Co-Counsel has drafted an email back to Carol attaching the redlined annotated Word document and the summary of the key terms. Now, also attached to this email is a link to the NDA in HiQ. With this button, Carol can get the NDA signed off with DocuSign internally and can then send it across to Samstone to get them to do the same. Your delegation of authority and authorised signatory process has been captured and built into HiQ, so this approval will go to the right signatory and will remind them to sign, and it will capture the time that they signed. All of this work and correspondence will save back into the matter in HiQ, including the email chain and all of the documents that we've generated. Feel free to click on the orange button to finish the process. Well, congratulations, you're still at the conference, Carol's thrilled, and you haven't left the room or needed to pull out a laptop. You're very welcome to close that browser now to exit that program. I hope you've enjoyed that imagined experience and that it's really opened up your eyes to what is possible using a trusted Gen AI legal tech ecosystem. If you would like to share this experience with your team, please come and chat with us at the booth, and we're happy to run a session and share more of the thought leadership and research with you at your next legal team meeting. I will wrap up today by encouraging you to be curious about Gen AI, to ask questions about the power of legal tech to augment the capacity of your team, and position yourself to really showcase how you are enabling business growth with a trusted ecosystem of legal tech and content solutions from Thomson Reuters. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Turley. If you have any questions, please do reach out to the TR team or Turley. They're going to be around for the rest of the day. All right, it is lunchtime, and it is the Mexican spread that we've got out for you. So if you weren't here yesterday, basically this door is now going to magically open, and we can just form two queues. There's a table in the middle, and enjoy. So we'll be back in 45 minutes. Thank you.
Let's get out on the floor. I like to move it, come and give me some more. Watch me getting physical, out of control. There's people watching me, I never miss a beat. Still the night, kill the lights, feel it under your skin. Time's right, keep it tight, cause it's pulling you in. Wrap it up, we can't stop, cause it feels like an overdose. Body's aching, system overload. Temperatures rising, I'm about to explode. Watch me, I'm intoxicated, digging the show. It's got me hypnotized. Everybody step aside. Still the night, kill the